Formula One fans, Toto Wolff just publicly humiliated Ferrari, openly stating that Hamilton's win in Barcelona and Leclerc's victory at Silverstone only happened because Mercedes essentially handed them away. And yet, at the very same time, the Austrian team boss is genuinely terrified by his own engine reliability problems, which could spectacularly end up handing the world championship to Ferrari. Speaking to Racing News 365, Wolff said word for word that without their reliability issues, Mercedes would have 70 or 80 additional points. And if you add those to their current 72-point lead, you get a margin that would be simply impossible to close. But the real bombshell is the stunning confession from Deputy Team Principal Bradley Lord, who openly admitted that grid penalties for Mercedes engines are almost inevitable in the second half of the season. Andrea Kimi Antonelli has already burned through his fourth set of components and will be forced to fit a fifth, triggering an automatic grid penalty, while George Russell is in the exact same boat after literally destroying his engine in qualifying in Hungary due to a water leak in the cooling system. Wolff's team is now trying to figure out the best race to take that penalty. Monza would be ideal for overtaking, but it is Antonelli's home race. And it would be genuinely embarrassing to start from the back of the grid in front of the Italian crowd. So the backup option is the Grand Prix in Baku. And through all of this, Ferrari, having used only 3 engines so far, can comfortably introduce A-Duo 2 without paying any penalty whatsoever. That is an enormous strategic advantage, and combined with Bradley Lord's admission that there will be no team orders at Mercedes, it could be the defining factor of this entire championship. If you want to stay up to date on everything Ferrari and Formula One, drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. With that said, let's get straight into the detailed breakdown. Let's start with the stunning words from Toto Wolff on Racing News 365. Words that are already sending shockwaves through Maranello. Wolff opened by saying they started the season in very strong form, and that integrating their power unit and chassis as a complete package allowed them to dominate. But then came the hard reality. He admitted they were badly hit by reliability, suffering 3 or 4 retirements. And then came the line that lit up Ferrari's fan base. He said flat out that Ferrari's 2 victories only happened because Mercedes lost them. He said they were unlucky in Barcelona with the safety car and then with Antonelli's problems at Silverstone. He also acknowledged that when Ferrari and McLaren brought upgrades while Mercedes stood still, suddenly the gap closed dramatically, and the fight became genuinely hard. Then comes the most staggering part of the whole Wolff analysis. The Austrian revealed just how far ahead Mercedes could have been without their reliability disasters. He said they probably lost 70 or 80 points compared to Ferrari due to retirements. He pointed out that with their current lead of 72 points, adding another 70 on top of that would have created a gap that was truly enormous. But those points are gone, and the competition is closing in. That is an admission that tells you everything about where Wolff's real fear lies. To put it in context, after 11 races of the 2026 season, Mercedes has won 8 times and accumulated 379 points. Ferrari is chasing at 302 points, and McLaren sits third at 220. On paper, Mercedes looks comfortably in control. In reality, the situation is far more complicated than it appears. And now comes the absolute bombshell of this whole story. Deputy Team Principal Bradley Lord has openly admitted that grid penalties for Mercedes engines are going to be virtually unavoidable in the second half of the season. Lord stated, word for word, that given how many components they used in the first half of the season, it is almost inevitable that at some point they will have to accept penalties. He said the strategy team and the engineers at Brixworth are evaluating the best solution for the remainder of the championship, but that realistically it will be very difficult to reach the end of the season with the components currently available. That is a massive admission, and it opens an enormous opportunity for Ferrari, who with only 3 used engines against Mercedes 4, will be able to exploit a huge strategic advantage when A-Duo 2 makes its debut at Monza with 0 penalty cost. Now let's look at exactly where both Mercedes drivers stand. Antonelli is already on his 4th set of components, meaning any further set will automatically come with grid penalties. Russell is currently on his 3rd set, which effectively becomes his 4th after the catastrophic problem in Hungary. The numbers and the probabilities point with near mathematical certainty to both drivers eventually having to accept some form of penalty, with the exact scale still to be determined. It is worth remembering that Russell was forced to retire in Canada with a battery problem, suffered energy deployment issues at both Silverstone and Spa, and then had to fit his last available engine after a dramatic water leak appeared during qualifying at the Hungarian Grand Prix, leaving engine number 3 completely beyond repair. Antonelli has also had his share of problems, being forced to retire from the Barcelona Grand Prix due to a battery failure. Now, here comes the most fascinating tactical dimension of this whole penalty situation. Wolff absolutely does not want to take the power unit penalty at the Italian Grand Prix because that is Antonelli's home race, and starting from the back of the grid in front of the Italian crowd would be genuinely mortifying. Wolff said on the record that Monza might look like the best place on paper to take the penalty, but that Baku is another real possibility, and that they might choose it specifically to ease the pressure on Monza and avoid forcing Kimi to start last in front of his home fans. And here is where it gets truly painful for Mercedes. Ferrari is planning to debut A Duo 2 at Monza using their second engine token, meaning Antonelli will face a Ferrari running at full strength for the first time, and without any penalty risk hanging over them. What should have been a Mercedes redemption race is turning into a very complicated picture. On the other side, Mercedes is working intensely on their own engine response. At Brixworth, the home of high-performance powertrains, bench testing on the 6-cylinder A Duo is reportedly wrapping up, and the signals coming from the engine department are very encouraging. There is talk of a meaningful power increase achieved through detailed work on the turbo, involving a different number and angle of the blades in the turbine wheel, combined with targeted work inside the combustion chamber, all paired with new Petronas fuel. The early signs suggest more horsepower is achievable without increasing overall fuel consumption. But perhaps most importantly, the new specification is said to include all the interventions needed to finally fix the reliability issues that have been the real Achilles heel of this first part of the season. Ola Källenius, the passionate president of Mercedes-Benz Group, is reportedly pushing hard for the new engine to make its debut at Monza, not wanting to lose any more time. And now comes the truly critical news for Ferrari. Deputy Team Principal Bradley Lord was crystal clear on the most sensitive topic of the moment. Mercedes will not use team orders. The principle is simple. If a Mercedes can win a race, a Mercedes must win the race, and that comes before everything else. The team comes first, and the Constructors' Championship is the absolute top priority. That statement means one thing for Antonelli and Russell. They will keep taking points off each other in their internal battle, swinging the door wide open for Ferrari's assault in the Drivers' Championship. Lord also admitted that Mercedes wants to win both titles, but that the main problem so far has been a lack of consistency from both cars. The message could not be clearer. Mercedes is fragile not just mechanically, but strategically as well. Look, the full Mercedes picture is genuinely dramatic and opens up a spectacular scenario for Ferrari. Wolff publicly dismisses Ferrari's victories as gifts handed to them by Mercedes' own problems, talks about 70 or 80 points thrown away, and sits on 8 wins and 379 points in the constructors' standings. But underneath all that confidence, the real fear is clear. Bradley Lord openly admits that grid penalties are almost inevitable for Antonelli, already on his 4th set of components. And for Russell, who just destroyed his engine in Hungary qualifying, Wolff's plan is to take the penalty in Baku to avoid the nightmare of starting from the back at Monza. But at that very same Monza race, Ferrari will debut A Duo 2 completely penalty-free. Mercedes is working on a counter-response with new Petronas fuel and a revised turbo setup. But Bradley Lord has already handed Ferrari an open invitation by confirming there will be no team orders, leaving Antonelli and Russell free to keep cutting into each other's points. Mercedes' fear could genuinely hand the World Championship to Ferrari. This fight is absolutely far from over.